This is Nathan Wood, pastor of North Dayton Baptist Church, and welcome to day 31 of the McShane reading plan. So we are a full month into the reading plan, a full month into 2021. Wow. It doesn't seem like it's been 20 years since 2001, does it? Wow. Anyway, so we are in Genesis chapter 32, Mark 3, Esther 8, and Romans 8. Genesis 32 is all about struggling with God. We all struggle with God. And through the struggle, God can raise us up to more than we have ever imagined. We do have to yield to Him, though. But we have to seek Him simultaneously. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. But look at how Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. Little supplanter, that's his name, Jacob. Supplanter or trickster is trying to trick God Himself here. And God tricks him by turning him and transforming him to a different identity. He says, no, you're not going to be a supplanter anymore. You're not going to be a trickster. You're not going to be a heel grabber. You are going to be kingly. Israel means he will rule as God, and the very name Israel is the identity of the line of Messiah, who will and does indeed rule as God, because He is God. They don't identify with, they identify with Abraham, but they're not named after Abraham. They're not named after Isaac, laughter. They're named after Israel. He will rule as God. And we struggle. We struggle. The man with the withered hand had to respond to the call of Jesus Christ to stretch forth His hand. How many of us would rather live a withered life than be restored to spiritual health and accept the invitation to the gospel and salvation through Jesus Christ the Lord? It's devastating, the effects of sin on life. Paul tells us in our passage in Romans 3, he said that there's none righteous, no, not one. There's none that seeketh after God, none does good. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But being justified freely by His grace through redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God has set forth to be a propitiation through faith in His blood, to declare His righteousness for the remission of sins that are passed through the forbearance of God. He died in our place. He died in our place. Why? Because we were not able nor willing to do the full extent of what was needed to be reconciled to God. He accepted torture and death on our behalf to reconcile us with the Father and to reconcile us unto Himself. And He just offers it now. He offers it now. Therefore we conclude that man is justified by faith without deeds of the law, verse 28. You have to have faith. Faith is not a work. Faith is a response to the work of Christ. Faith is a response to the work of Christ. You have to accept it. You have to stretch out your hand. You have to give up your struggle and say, Lord, bless me. Bless me. You've got me. I'm broken. You must come to a place where you yield to Christ. And just a little bonus content, Esther chapter 8 shows God using a wondrous, mundane political solution to save His people. And also, I don't want to get political here, but this is ideological. And I believe that it speaks to the importance of liberty, which is very valuable, very precious, and has been in our country, has been bought with the purchased price of many servicemen and women who have fallen, and many who have been grievously wounded. and given time and love and heartache and sorrow. We need to thank them and thank the Lord for them. Liberty and freedom are not free. So what ends up happening here is that old King Ahasuerus can't undo his promise to Haman, because he's written a law, and he unilaterally can't declare it unconstitutional because he wrote it. Once it's on the book with his seal on it, he may be able to write a law, but he can't expunge the law from the book. So what's his solution? He says, okay, folks, I may not be able to undo my endorsement of people slaying the Jews in every corner. And this is every corner of it's not just in Babylon or Persia proper, it's across the Persian Empire, including the land of Israel, where some of the Jews are still at anyway. Essentially, he gave Haman the right to wipe out the Jewish people. Sound familiar? Adolf Hitler got even closer. But the difference between what Hitler almost accomplished by killing 6 million Jews, may it never happen again, God forbid. What happened there is that Hitler learned something from history. You see, Hitler disarmed the populace in order to enslave and kill his in-state enemies that he considered vermin, namely the Jewish people and other people that he deemed to be worthless. He was a monster. I believe he was Satan-possessed. But anyway, what King Ahasuerus does, King Ahasuerus had been tricked into this by whatever means, and he has repented of it. So what does he do? He combats it with liberty. And liberty that, thank God, the United States has enshrined in the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. The right to keep and bear arms is the right to defend yourself against oppression, and deadly oppression at that. It's the right to defend yourself against racism and hatred. It's a right to defend yourself and your family, your kindred. Ahasuerus knew this. He knew that the way to fight corruption, in that, not in an offensive way, but in a defensive way, the way to fight corruption, to beat it back and to deter it, maybe even without a fight, God willing, without a fight, the way to deter it is to have an armed populace. So that's what he allowed. That's what he allowed with the Jewish people. He allowed them to arm themselves, and he gave them permission to defend themselves. Now, having a king give permission for such things, that's still dictatorial. But it shows us the importance of that freedom and the value of that freedom. Christ did say that those who live by the sword will perish by the sword. But defending one's home is not living by the sword. Desiring bloodshed and being bloodthirsty and being warmongers, yes, that's living by the sword. That's hating your brother to the point where Christ said you're guilty of murder in your heart. Christ also said, let he who hath no sword sell his garment and buy one. And that defense of one's family and self-person is important and valid. Now, with that power comes great responsibility, and I would say that as Christians, we really need to count the cost of defending our personal selves and what that means for the reputation of the gospel. I like what Gandalf says in Lord of the Rings: do not be so quick to deal out death and judgment. Many who live deserve death, and many that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Tolkien was a Roman Catholic. I believe he was a Christian. This is definitely a Christian concept. When we as believers or people, humans in general, deal out judgment and death is something that we need to take with extreme gravity and avoid at all costs. It is not to be taken lightly. However, this passage does show the importance of the armed populace in order to defend against oppression and stupid legislation and stupid government and stupid racism, to defend against hate. It's legitimized in the scriptures. Didn't mean to get political. I feel it's more ideological, and it is biblical. We love you. Have a good day.